Looks like we're live, Mom. Hello, everyone. Juliana here. It is Friday night, 7-something p.m. Eastern time. We're a couple minutes late, but they'll let it slip. And tonight's episode, yes, I'm still putting on lipstick because I haven't actually looked in the mirror. And, you know, it doesn't matter how many times you do this and how many times you learn not to look at the camera. You still get a little bit silly about it. And whatever makes you comfortable, you know, just be you. All right, we're doing us. And guys, thank you so much for joining the Smart Self live stream. Really happy to have you here tonight. Also really happy to have a guest, a very special guest here with me tonight. Tonight's episode, if you haven't checked yet, it's called Young Enough to Be My Mother. Okay? And obviously that's an intentional title. They're all intentional. But this here is my mama. Her name is Mariavittoria Trichilo because, like, why not have an exceptional Italian name? Mom, why don't you say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone.
She's going to be mild. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. Oh, I have my microphone is like a mile away, people. I'm like completely a mess tonight. You're going to have to forgive me. And I shouldn't be doing this with the left hand. Okay, how about now? I want to do a quick audio check. If you can hear us well, I would like you to put a yes, we can hear you into the comments, please. This is a public service you are offering me by confirming you can hear us well. So please let us know if you can hear us in the comments. We will see them. We will appreciate your comments. And so far, we've had no comments. So it's very possible I'm just miming right now. If you can hear us, please let us know. I want to make sure that you can hear us and that you guys are out there and alive and excited for tonight's show. Well, gee, I'm disappointed. I would have thought there was at least some family out there that would give us a thumbs up. We can hear you. Give me one. One person tell me you can hear me, or else I'm going to switch up audio completely. And at this point, I'm expecting one of our husbands to do something.
Yeah, I would hope so.
You would hope so, right? Hello, hello. If you can hear us, please let us know. All right. We're going to keep forging. Okay, yes. We got it. We got the, you can hear us well. Well, thank you for some thank you. All right, awesome, guys. I'm really excited to be here tonight. If you read the description of tonight's show, I'm going to actually read it because I actually find that it's a really great way to embarrass my guests. Thank you, John. Yes. Appreciate that. I'm going to say a little hello to Mr. Manning over here. Very much appreciate it. Thank you. All right, I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of my guest tonight, all right? So here's the description I wrote. She married and became a mother as a teen. She was pushed out of high school. We'll get into that a little bit. She lost her firstborn. She masters every adventure she sets her heart to. She faces incredible opposition. She's in love with the Almighty. She's an incessant dreamer. Tonight, I'd like you to meet my mom, Mariavittoria Trichilo. Maiden name is Mobilio. Is a woman worth knowing. Her story is special, unique. Her heart is impossibly huge. Her voice is powerful, and she'll honor your weirdness, even if you won't honor hers, except with her girls, of course. Mother-daughter relationships can be complicated. Mine with my mother is no exception. She is bright and challenging in ways I've never experienced with anyone else. I'm also harder on her than I am on anyone else, except maybe for my husband. Sorry, honey. I can't explain my relationship with my mom perfectly, but I can say that she inspires me to be more. With each other, we are both close and distant, kind and harsh, similar and different. We're mother and daughter. There are many topics that we can cover tonight. We don't have a set agenda. We're going to go with the flow. And what I can promise you is it's going to be interesting. So, Mama, how embarrassed are you? Shy, proud when I read that?
I just don't know if I'm going to be able to live up to any of that. But I'm truly awestruck at what you've written about me. I never saw myself that way. Don't see myself that way. But there were a few things there that are definitely a part of who I am. So, well, all of it really, but a few things that I totally identify with. So.
I'm really, really grateful that you're here. And not just because you're my mom and you're supporting me, because that's awesome too, who doesn't want that, but also because I do think you have a really interesting story to tell. Like, you are the opposite of conventional, right?
I am.
That is definitely true. Okay, so let's kick this off with one of the first things that I said in there, that you were forced out of high school. Now, if I remember correctly, the story that I I heard from you was that the nuns who ran your school and taught at your school suggested you leave, or was it not a suggestion?
Well, what actually happened was that I got married. It was January. I had my birthday in December. I don't want to say what I turned, but I did have my birthday in December. And I was getting married in January. So I got married, leaving school from winter break to not coming back at all because now I'm married. And the thing that happened to me immediately was that I started to feel lost. I didn't know who I was. Like, why am I not at school? Like, it didn't feel normal. It didn't feel right. I had never thought of being a high school dropout. It was never an intention. And I was not okay with that. And besides which, I was going to a private school. And in those days, you actually paid to be at the school. And so all of a sudden, one morning I woke up and I said to your dad, look, I'm going to school today. You're driving me to school. And we actually had to drive about 25 miles because we had moved away from the school after we got married. And I just showed up in class. I just went to my first homeroom class. I didn't ask anyone's permission. And by fourth period, I got called into the office. And the head of the school at the time was a nun. And she asked me, what are you doing here? And I lied to a nun.
I love how you say that with shame. It's really cute. Okay.
Well, it was not my intention to lie to her, but I just didn't.
What are you doing here? And what did she say?
I said, I can be here. I'm allowed to be here. Why shouldn't I not be here? And she said, well, you're married. And I looked at her and I said, well, what? I did go to a private all-girls school. So the thing was that anytime one of the young girls from the school did get pregnant, they were told to leave. They were sent off to another school. I guess it was a sister school somewhere. Nobody ever knew where. And some of the girls came back. Most of them didn't. But I wasn't pregnant. I didn't get married because I was pregnant. I just got married because I chose to. And so I came back to school, and there's this woman saying to me that I can't be here. Well, I didn't ever think that being married and having an education conflicted. So I lied to her and said, well, I'm allowed to be here. You can't ask me to leave.
But why are you saying that's a lie? What's the lie part?
The lie was that she had jurisdiction over whether or not I stay.
Oh, okay.
And I told her she didn't.
I see. Okay.
But what she did have was my money. She had my money. And I finally, when I got to the place where I realized she wasn't going to really budge, I said to her, well, if you want me to leave, then you're going to have to give me back my money because I want to be here. And in the meantime, between that particular interview or meeting and the end of the school day, she told me she would let me know by the end of the school day. All of my teachers intervened and asked her why could I not be there? And by the end of the school day, they had all told me what I had to catch up with. And in those days, we had 8 classes a day. It was not semester system, it was terms, so full terms. And I came back to a real heavy load, which I loved, and finished the school year and didn't have to worry about being asked not to come back the next year when I was pregnant.
Okay, sorry. You didn't have to worry about it? Meaning you just chose
I just didn't,
to opt out?
Yeah, I just didn't show up. And that was the end of that. But I did finish high school. I did it on my own. And I'm a perpetual learner.
Yes.
I can't
You
stop.
are. I prefer the word incessant to perpetual. Because incessant to me indicates this idea that like the world is trying to stop you, but you won't let it.
That's true.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Right? Like some people are insatiable when it comes to food or sexual appetite. My mother, education. Well, even though there were a lot of things that stood in your way in terms of getting an education.
Absolutely. The thing of it was for me that when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of stuff. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so my entertainment at night when Bonanza was on TV was sitting with the World Book encyclopedias in my lap and reading them from cover to cover. And I became so awestruck at all the variables, all the vast, aspects and subjects and topics that were out there. And I just found that even if you're just reading a little bit about something, just so that you have an idea what it is even, that's helpful. And I've always, I guess I've always been inclined to continue that.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about a few of the unconventional things that you have studied. How fluent or not fluent, how would you describe your proficiency in Hebrew?
I am okay to read the transliterations and
Okay, what's a transliteration?
so the transliteration is when they take the word and they break it up and they use our letters to tell us what that particular portion of the word is spelled to say.
So they spell the Hebrew out phonetically.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm okay to do that, and especially if I've heard it. A lot of the Hebrew that I am well acquainted with, or more acquainted with, is the liturgy, which I fell in love with, by the way. Just liturgy beautiful.
Liturgy being the Bible scripture.
No, liturgy being the sequence of the sermon, not the sermon itself, but when you come into the synagogue and you're going to be saying, let's say, a prayer, it's followed by another prayer, especially in that context. And so all of it together is considered a liturgy. You find that in the Catholic Church too, where there's a liturgy, and then they say the little sermon.
So it's kind of like a program. It frames the entire service.
Absolutely.
And you fell in love with the way that they frame the service at synagogue.
I love the language. I love that it's musical. Most of it is being sung, and it just touches me. It reaches my heart. I love music anyway, as you know.
Yes, this is very true. So I do have a fun little anecdote to share. So at my wedding, it was only appropriate that my mother say the prayer before dinner because she's a God-loving woman, you know, and everyone knows this. This is my mom. And so we asked her to do the prayer. Usually you ask, you know, maybe a young child to say something, probably a written prayer. But in this case, of course, we asked my mom. And she stands up there and says, okay, well, I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. You won't recognize the words, but it's very beautiful. This is what it means. And then she chants a Hebrew song. Is that what you call it?
It was actually the Shema, just the first line. And essentially what I was doing at that time, because I had not yet attended synagogue, was inviting God to the ceremony. I was just stating that he was the God of Israel. And that the words themselves say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one," and that's it. That's all that I sang.
That was all a lot longer than that, by the way.
Yeah, because of the notes again.
Yeah. That makes
elongated
sense,
it, but it really wasn't the entire Shema, and it wasn't a prayer as such. I didn't know though at that time. I just knew that it was beautiful, and so that was what I did.
Yeah, and you also sang "Morning Has Broken." I'm a bit of a Cat Stevens fan. I'm a bit of a Cat Stevens fan, and "Morning Has Broken" it's kind of interesting because it could easily be a hymn. It's a really beautiful song. So yeah, let's talk about singing. When did you discover you could sing?
I never knew that I couldn't. I just grew up singing. I mean, from the time I was a little girl.
That's interesting.
You remember my dad, my mom, my brother, everyone in my household sang. It was a tradition on Sundays that after church, we'd come home, mom would be cooking, and dad and my brother would pull out the guitar and the accordion, and then we'd be off singing until food was ready. So I've always done it, and I never thought that anyone couldn't.
Sorry, that's just hilarious to me. Oh my gosh, because then you went on to have 4 daughters who all tried to sing. There is one very magical voice in the group of 4, but maybe one day I'll be able to coax her on here.
Well, I think you do pretty well yourself, I have to say.
Oh, that's very nice of you. That's very nice of you. I actually have sung publicly. I recorded a short video one morning and shared it on YouTube. Just saying that I try and kind of start my day with something uplifting, and I sang a little bit of a song a cappella, and I actually got some really nice feedback, which I wasn't expecting. I was just, you know, when you're stupid happy and you're like, I didn't think for a moment that it would be received badly or I would be embarrassed. I was just like, oh, I want everyone to be this happy this morning.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really funny. You know, validation is a funny thing. We shouldn't need it, but we do. And it's not that somebody, said to me, "Oh, your voice is incredible." That's not it. It was you uplifted me this morning, and that meant a lot to me.
And I know one time when we were all at home still, and you had recorded yourself, it took me a really good listen to discover it wasn't me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay. All right. So you're obviously a woman of faith, and you have a lot of demand to go and sing at secular events, or not necessarily secular events in some cases, but in some cases, weddings even, but more for entertainment and not for religious reasons. And how do you feel? Is there a difference for you emotionally in terms of the effect on you physiologically and your heart and your soul? Is it different to sing secular music than it is to sing praises to the Lord?
For me, it's an actual task, singing anything that's outside of my comfort zone. And at that point, I don't necessarily enjoy myself to start. But because singing is so natural for me, I struggle at the beginning. So I end up with all of the side effects that people talk about when they're nervous. I end up with this bad stomach and can't eat, and I don't want to eat all day, and I'm nervous and I'm trembling. And then I sing a couple of songs, and that's the end of that. It's gone because now I'm back. And it's just a part of who I am. And so there's not me in front of people singing. It's just me singing. And at that point in time, I'm fine.
So tell me, what is the song that you sing when the dance floor is kind of lame and you it always gets everyone out there? What's the name of that song?
I Will Survive by
I Will Survive. Yeah, that's a great one.
That is a fun song. I was invited to sing with a really fabulous band one night. Your dad created the opportunity, and I was invited to go to Chicken Deli, I think it's called. It's on Yonge Street. It's a very famous restaurant, at least it was. And this band is there, and they're playing, and they're really great. And I didn't have any English songs really that I could bring forward because I try not to really establish myself in that regard. I just was sitting back listening to them, and then they called me up to sing, and there was no one dancing in the whole place. And so they said to me, "Well, what do you want to sing?" And I said, "I Will Survive." And what key? And I said, "Original key." And so they started to play, and I started the song, and that was it. Everybody's head turned, and everybody was on the floor dancing. And right away, when the song ended, they said to me, "What else you got? What else you got?"
Well,
I had prepared nothing else.
Again, I think music is a really incredible thing where it's awesome to get validation, but the validation is actually a joint experience that feels so incredible, right? Okay, so I'm going to put something out there, and I hope you're going to be brave. Would you sing something for us now, just a cappella? And I'm gonna be so brave myself that if you do something, I'll do something.
Oh boy!
Right? Okay, I shouldn't be singing. Like this is. I apologize to everybody in advance. But if you will sing something, just a short verse, a cappella, I'll do the same. So you can kind of see, folks, what I'm talking about.
I'm just going to have to go with the song that comes to my head because I don't have anything, again, prepared.
Sure, totally.
So this is actually a song by a gentleman that it's a gospel song that I heard many, many years ago, and it's the song that jumped into my head. So it's called Wounds and Windows, and it goes like this. I don't know if I can now, of course, because you put me on the spot.
Oh, come on. If I can do it, you can do it. And you have some tea. If you want to take a breather, you're more than welcome. And I'm sure this is a no-no on TV or whatever the heck we're doing. But I have water. I just had it on the wrong side of the desk. So, all right, go for it.
When wounds become windows, clearer than glass, and we finally see through the pain. When time not possessing, but counting at last, could never amount to our gain. That's when wounds become windows, and we see through the pain. And of course, my voice is all shaky. Like I said,
I love it.
The first song is always the worst. So you have to get me 10 songs in.
Honestly, okay. So if you let me off the hook, I will not do it. but
I
it's totally
sang it
your
all
call.
wrong too. But
Okay.
The thing
That's
is,
fair. Not that you're saying it wrong, but it's fair. You did it. I made the offer. I will commit.
Right.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
You could have prepared me for that.
I honestly didn't know I was going to ask.
Okay.
I really am doing this conversationally. Okay, so I have 2 songs that I can think of right now. One is I'm Yours by Jason Mraz, which is very kind of like upbeat, and it's the one that I sang once before online. And the other one is your song. Oh, now I can't remember.
I've Journeyed Long?
Yeah, that one. So which one do you want to hear?
I've Journeyed Long.
And now, you know what's funny? I've gotten some validation around the Jason Mraz song, which I love. I've sung this song, your song, to a few people, and no one's ever said that's nice to me, and I don't know why. So it's very possible I sing it poorly. But okay, I'm going to try it. Okay.
Well, I think too, this is what I've discovered is that I've sung many of my own songs in public, and I don't get the feedback that I hope to get. It's because people don't know the song.
Yeah, for sure.
You always get that reaction when someone knows a song. It stimulates memories, it stimulates emotions,
Totally.
and it causes people to fall into a certain groove immediately upon hearing it. That's what happens with I Will Survive. Yes. Right? Especially the women, they hear it and they're like on the dance floor because I'm going to show, the guys like I'm a tough cookie. But maybe
especially in the days when I Will Survive came out, right? Like that really was a woman's anthem, I would think, right?
I think it was.
Yeah. I remember actually you sang that. You sang I Will Survive at my cousin Ricky's wedding, your nephew. And you didn't know it at the time, but my boyfriend who came to the event with me, we were actually broken up. And we hadn't yet broken the news to the families. And it was so liberating dancing to that song. I cannot tell you, we had such a great time dancing to that. Both of us were like, oh, thank God, we will survive. Okay, so folks, you won't recognize this, but it's labor of love and a creation of love. And remind me the first words again. I've journeyed. Okay. Will you save me if I
can? I will.
Okay, let's see if I can remember. Okay. Give me the first 2.
I've journeyed long to find you,
okay.
Lord.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to totally ruin this. Hello, world. Okay. I've journeyed. No, I'm totally off key.
I know we both are. It's okay. Maybe we'll do it when we are better.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to do it a little later. We're going to come back to it. I only brought it up because it was one that I could remember the tune of, and now I've forgotten. But it's okay.
And that's what nerves do to you.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm not even nervous because you know what? I don't imagine anyone out there. No. I really don't.
I know.
Because the fact is, like, I started doing this live stream because I wanted to. I miss people. I miss connecting with people, and I miss connecting with brand new friends and old friends. And Friday nights were a common time where, I'd be out at work, maybe at a trade show or who knows what was going on. And I would say, hey, why don't you come home with me? And I'd bring home these various people. Some people who had been here before, some people my husband's never met. And I'd give them a call in the car and say, we're on our way home. And 2 glasses into the wine, we're having a great conversation and connecting. And that just means so much to me. And I miss it so dearly. And so that's why I started doing this. And I talked to a dear friend of mine, Drew Marshall, a few days ago. He hosted a show on 12:50 a.m. Joy, 12:50 a.m. And it was about a Christian being in crisis and or having a crisis of belief. Sorry if I've mischaracterized that, Drew. But he said something so simple. He gave me a lot of advice, and he said one thing: just have fun.
Yeah. That makes a difference.
And it's just so silly how much of a difference that made, just reminded me that that's what I'm here for. So, it's nice that you join us. Please come hang out, but I'm going to have a good time if you join us or not. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we'll get back to that song a little later. Let's talk about another musical moment in, I believe it was, 2014. I believe it was September. We were at the hospital. We were at the hospital with my eldest sister, Marcella, and suddenly on the monitor, her oxygen level dropped dramatically. I'm remembering the number 60, but I don't really remember if that's a good number or not. I don't know if that was the number. That's the number I remember. And they rushed her to the ICU, and they were about to intubate her. And we said, don't do that to her. She's very fragile. She was living with MS for many years. And they told us, well, if you don't want her intubated, she's probably just got a few minutes. And they told us 10 minutes. And the family huddled around my sister Marcella, and we started singing.
Yes, we did.
We sang and sang and sang
Keith Green songs.
A lot of Keith Green. And so if you don't know Keith Green, I'm sure a lot of people don't, unless you're, a Christian from the 80s. Keith Green is kind of like, who's that British singer, Sir Elton John? He's kind of like Christian Elton John, on the piano, very lively music, So, and my sister and I, we grew up with that music. You were playing that around the house. We would clean together and do stuff together, and it was really very important music to us. So we sang that song after song until Dad looked up at the clock, and it had been like 4 hours or something. And through his tears, he said, "I think it's been longer than 10 minutes."
Yeah. And we all kind of took another look, because we were in reverie. We were in a twilight zone. Time had no meaning to us. We were caught up in the moment, and she was as well, because she could still hear us, which is the most phenomenal thing of all, that a person in that particular state is still capable of hearing what is happening around them.
And I would even say participating. I know she didn't really have much control over her voice at that point, but I would really say that she was like actively present.
I believe she was, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that the doctors did end up being right. They were wrong. She, I say gladly, came home with us and endured, which is her special word, another 6 months. And I had the pleasure of making all her favorite foods and staying home from work with her. And I felt that it was my first time really just being her mother. I don't know how much of a mother I was for you or your sisters at that time, but I was her mother for sure.
You just said the first time being her mother, but you mean the first time throughout her illness, or what do you mean?
I mean that, because she was diagnosed when she was 18, and it was a gradual progression of the disease neurologically, and that we didn't really ever expect for it to get to the place that it got, where she was bedridden and unable to even scratch her nose. And I worked through it all, and we had to pay, for various medical things. And as a result, I had to work, and Dad and I worked. We were there up to 10, 12 hours in a day, and made sure that we could financially equip those needs. But my being home with her equipped a need for me. I needed to be her mom. I needed to minister to her in those moments. I needed her to know that she was important, because throughout the course of her life, we had as a family gone out to your sister's games, various events. She had never taken any of that time from us. And so I needed that time. I think it was more a gift for me than anything else.
So it's really interesting when you say that, that you went to soccer games and events and stuff for your kids, and she didn't get to participate in that. When I think about our lives together early on, before the other two daughters were born, there are 4 of us in total. I think of us more as an equal family unit than anything else, right? It wasn't, you and Dad weren't working so that we could go to ballet. It wasn't like that. It was very much a mutual type of relationship. And I think it's interesting that you feel that you didn't give to her in the same way in that time. But I think we actually got, and her being older than me, I think she actually got some really unique things in that time.
Yeah, she got unique things when she was first born, for sure, because I was a young kid with the kid, and I taught her how to read. By the time she was 3, she could read, like really read. I was walking down the street with her one day, and there was a lady in front of us wearing a T-shirt. We were on her back. She had the words pasted, "Acknowledge that." And we were just walking. We were going to McDonald's, a very rare thing in those days. And we were walking, and she turned around, she pulled my hand, she tugged on my hand, and she said to me, "Mom, acknowledge what?" So not only did she read the words, she knew what they meant, and I was floored.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that, but she was my first student, so to speak, because being a parent is a really large learning curve, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is. And every curve is different. Like,
Yes.
Some are like this, some are like that. It
Yep.
goes every which way.
That's right. So for me, especially because I was as young as I was, and I grew up with Italian parents, new immigrants to the country, who didn't really have anything to offer me that the country would want them to offer me. But I also had a brother and a sister who were my age, well, not my age, but they were like a second set of parents.
Yeah, they were not your age.
No,
they were
not my-
significantly older, right?
They were. But my mom had 11 children and 8 died. So they were at the beginning of that.
So your brother and sister that survived were the first two born?
They were the first two, and then I was the last.
You were the last.
Yeah. So for them, they had a little sister. It wasn't something that they thought unusual that there was such a spread in years, because they had watched my mom have all these babies that didn't survive.
Wow.
So I was their little precious toy. Like, they made sure that I had whatever they could give to me. Time. I remember my brother taking me to see the Santa Claus parade downtown Toronto. The whole time I was on his shoulders. He walked me through the snow on his shoulders. Yeah, and I was always loved, and I knew it. I was never felt unwanted, never felt as though there was a gap between us. I just knew I had a mom and dad and a brother and sister. And so all of my needs as a child were provided.
So do you know why the siblings that came before you passed away? So many of them did?
Yeah, my mom had an Rh negative factor. And in those days in Italy, if you didn't have a lot of money and you couldn't go to a real hospital, and the doctor came to your home to deliver the babies, oftentimes he delivered them piece by piece. It was not a very pretty thing. It was truly ugly and raw and negative. And I remember my mother telling me one time when I was pregnant with your youngest sister that that was the way it happened. And I remember crying for hours because I couldn't imagine, especially being pregnant at the moment, I could not imagine her having to endure being awake because she didn't have the anesthetic, and having to see a child come away from her that way. Yeah. The trauma and the tragedy of it is extreme, and I could never have even considered, I'm going to say, surviving that. I don't know if I could have myself, but my mother did time and time again, because that was what, in her opinion, was her lot. That was what was given to her until they came to Canada. And then, of course, in Canada, people had the option to go to a hospital. And so she did. I was early. I came into the world 1 month early.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I weighed full term, though. Leave that to me.
I love that. I love that. That's all the Italian in
that's
you.
Right.
You know, like
that's right.
You're like, Canada, I'm keeping my heritage.
That's right. So I was born and I had Rh negative problems and issues, and I was going to die. My father called over the 2 doctors that had delivered me and said to them, "You see her nails, you see her eyes, they're black, they're blue. She needs a blood transfusion, and if you don't give it to her, she's going to die." And they looked at each other and they said, "He's right." So they gave me one. And then the thing about it was, in those days, you had to pay for it, and my dad didn't have the money. Think of this. The first house they bought, I was about 2 or 3 years old, and they paid $700 for the house.
Wow.
In those days. And when I was born, the cost would have been $350. So they could have owned a house almost for the cost that it would cost.
So your blood transfusion would have been $350, and a house was $700 at that time.
At that time.
Wow.
So what happened was, my dad and my mom had not that money. They did not have it, and there was no 2 ways about it. So once it was done, they were in Sick Children's Hospital. He came to see me. The doctors came to see me too, and he said to them, "Doctors, I don't have the money." And they said, "Well, then you can't take her home." And he said, "Okay." And he started to walk away. And they thought, he's going to leave her here.
but he was going to leave you there alive.
He wasn't going to leave me there.
Well, but I guess my point is, if he had a choice, it seems that he would absolutely choose health and happiness in life for you than any other path that didn't work out in you surviving.
Exactly. He was determined that I was going to have a life, and if he could help it, and he did. And so I owe that little moment in time to the perseverance and the persistence of an uneducated Italian man who could hardly speak English, but who really wanted his child to live. So
well, and saw so many of his children die because of not having the access to healthcare. Now, one thing I notice, I hope I don't embarrass you here, but one thing I notice is you don't look at the camera.
No, I don't.
Well, okay, can I challenge you to either look at the camera or look at my reflection? Is that okay?
I don't like looking at myself.
Look at me. Look at me. It's like you, I don't know, how many years ago? I'm not sure, but it's not that much of a difference. Wow. It's mostly hair color and comfort wearing makeup. Like that's really the only difference. Can you see here, folks? We're pretty much the same person. Okay, so when I tell people about my story and I explain that I grew up in a very, very traditional Italian family, I almost always almost never go into the detail of the fact that you were born here. I almost always just say I'm first generation Canadian. And I do that because of the fact that I was raised very traditionally, and you really were just born in Canada. It's not like your parents had been here forever and they had assimilated and that sort of thing. Can you tell me a little bit about what like you were born here, so you were Canadian. You were the most Canadian of all of your family and like even extended family, I would say.
Absolutely. I was the only one, I think, of all my parents' siblings. They had some of their family members that had come to Canada as well. And I was the only child that was born here of all of my cousins.
So what was it like to grow up in Canada? Did you learn English first, Italian first? Did you feel Canadian, Italian? Did you feel like you fit in anywhere?
I think I learned the languages simultaneously. I spoke the dialect with my parents, as a matter of fact, and the English, well, the kids outside playing with me spoke English. So you spoke what they spoke in order to be understood. And I didn't see a difference. I didn't understand that there was an absolute difference. I didn't even realize that my parents didn't speak English properly. To me, it was all words, and they came very freely, as you can see.
Okay, that's interesting. And I had a thought in there. It's going to come back to me in a second. So I think that language experience was really interesting, but culturally, things were really different at home than outside of the home. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
Can you give me an example of something that just like a rule inside the house versus a rule outside the house?
Well, I didn't do any of the things any of the other kids did. I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to have certain, I'm going to guess, now we call them, things that children go to for their, enlargement, so to speak.
So like gymnastics or piano.
Yeah, none of those. I didn't have classes of any sort. I didn't have any type of recreational skills. Anything that I was allowed to do had to be something that my parents were familiar with. For example, one time the boy next door, the little bad boy next door, was allowed to go with his, because his mother had discovered there was something called the Boys Club of Canada, or America, actually. It was called Boys Club of America. And they had free games and things for kids to play. And he'd already been. And so his mom said to my mom, why don't you let her go too? There's lots
Little Boys of America.
Yeah,
I'm sure she received that invitation well.
Well, she did say we could go, and we did go. But on the way there, it was miles and miles. It must have been about 7 or 8 miles away from the house where we lived, and we ran most of the way there. But when we got there, we were too late to sign up for anything. We were only allowed to watch. We were told we could come back the next day. But on the way back, because we had none of the activities. We had participated in nothing. On the way back, there was this swing and this slide, this spiral slide that we started to play on, and we didn't come home till it was dark. And I was never allowed to go back.
Okay,
as a result.
So I want to understand, you went there alone, just you and this boy?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I think I was 5.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. No. I also have to, I have to stop for a moment. We talked very early on in this conversation about how much education means to you, and some of your story around your education journey. Now, I think there's a continuing narrative there. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about your mom's experience with education. Did she get to go to school? That sort of thing.
My mom was one of 18 children.
She was so youngest, 11, and then 18. So no wonder she was used to medical complications, and she's like, "This is my lot, you know. At least I'm not having 18 babies, right?"
Yeah.
Very different world.
She was the youngest of 18. She was born during the sphere of time where, the Second World War happened. So as a child, she had very little. I remember her telling me that one Christmas they let her have a loaf of Italian bread, the one with the hole in it, and she wore it like a bracelet on her arm and swung it around all night until they had to eat it. So, there wasn't very much.
It wasn't even hers. It was like, you can hold the bread. That's here for dinner.
And as a gift, they would get an orange. So 18 children. I think the oldest must have been at least 18 years older than her. I mean, I don't see how else it could have been. But as the youngest child, the youngest female child, she was under a lot of pressure to do things that the older females didn't want to have to do anymore, like wash the clothes for 18 or 22, whatever, 20 people. And she used to have to take those clothes down to the riverbank and rub stones on them with homemade soap. And anyway, one day her older sister, the one directly above her, said, let's go to school. So they went to school.
So, and this was Zia Concetta.
Yeah.
Zia Concetta was a force to be reckoned with.
She was a force to be reckoned with. She was there for my mom, I think, because they were so close in age. I think there was maybe 3 years between them, or 4, something to that effect. She made sure that my mom was safe. She made sure that my mom had things that maybe nobody else noticed she needed. So this one day she decided, we're going to school. And when they got home that night, of course they hadn't done all their normal chores, even though they were only gone a few hours. And so one of the brothers who came in from the farming came up to them and said, where have you been? Why is this not done? And he beat them both up.
For going to school. Because the answer was, we went to school.
Yeah. So the next day, my aunt went back. My mother did not. And she never went back. So all she learned how to do was how to sign her name. And any other type of reading or writing that she learned on her own later.
It's interesting. I think I remember both of my grandmothers having a book, and the book was different. I remember them having Bibles and other books, but they each had one book that they would keep beside them. And I think they just reread it over and over.
Very possibly. Maybe they never even read the whole thing cover to cover.
Yeah.
Well, for my mother, that might have been the case.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that she was an ignorant woman, and my mother could do mathematics in her head she was a whip with numbers. So where she failed with letters, she didn't fail with numbers. I don't know who taught her how to do whatever she did, but she did it well, and she took care of the household money and all of the payments for anything that needed to be done.
And no doubt, like I would fully agree with you. I can tell you guys out there that when sometimes I would come home from school and I could tell that my grandmother Serafina was at my house by the way the house looked. It was strange because it wasn't dramatic, but I could tell. And I think in this day and age, if she was born today, she would easily be, the chief operating officer of a company or something.
Oh, yeah. Molly Maid look out, like she would have been there.
Molly Maid, but I almost don't even want to just suggest the cleaning aspect of it. Like, she knew how to make a machine operate. She made everything operate smoothly.
She did.
And I remember when she was still well enough, but not well enough to do all of the work at Christmas dinners or Easter or something, she would sit in her chair, and she would tell us each what to do. Okay, you take this and go get this exact container, and you're going to put it in there. And she was precise. She was incredible at predicting, how to fit things into all of the containers, how to fit them all into the fridge. She would have 5 or 6 different sauces for all of the different preferences. This person eats red meat. This person only eats pork. This person only eats chicken. It was incredible, like just the logistics of the operation she ran.
And the memory, she had an amazing memory. Mm-hmm. If, I don't know that it was photographic because we have nothing to go by, but she remembered things that nobody else did. And it was a wonderful combination because my father was more creative. Mm-hmm. And so she had these other skills that really probably went unappreciated because in her times, she just considered it was part of her job description. Mm-hmm. She was a woman of the house. That's what she called herself. Mm-hmm. Femina de casa. That's it.
And I'll never forget some of the stories that I heard. I don't know I can't remember now if I heard them, who I heard them from. I know some I heard directly from your father, my grandfather, about him being paired with her. And how the fathers came together to discuss whether or not their children would be married. And I think it was your father's father who went through the house and surveyed if the beds of straw were all evenly spread through, like the straw was all evenly spread through the bed sheets, and if there was anything dirty in the kitchen. And she was really assessed on her ability to be a woman of the house.
Yeah, that may well be, and I don't know that he ever told me that, but I do know that when he saw her, he was smitten. He says, and to the end of his life, he always said that she was the most beautiful woman in the whole town, and there was none like her. His brother had married her sister, so that's the Zia Conchetta that we mentioned earlier. And the two brothers had very different personalities. My father was more like the troublemaker or the mischievous brother. There were 9 children in his family, 8 of which were male, and he was second last. And so he made sure he was noticed. He was constantly getting in trouble in one sort or another. And but it didn't matter. My father also had a voice that blew people away. So they had a little time after they were married. They lived in a castle in the town where they were born. It's called Vibo Valentia. It's still there. It's now considered the name of the province. And the castle which you visited on your honeymoon has become a museum. But it faced into a valley. And my father would sit on a wall at night after they had their dinner, which was very early, actually, probably around 5 or so. He would do whatever he was asked to do for the count all day. And then at night, he would sit on the wall, which was 12 feet wide. And with his guitar, he would sing. And the entire people whose homes faced the valley would cry out to him, sing this one. And he did. And that was how they spent their nights.
I did not know that.
Yeah, his voice, the first time I heard Andrea Bocelli on the radio, I was like freaking out because I thought,
so I'm just going to stop and say a little bit of context. So Andrea Bocelli has got this very operatic voice, although he doesn't just sing opera.
No.
He also does some mainstream, I wouldn't call it pop, but mainstream music. He's done collaborations with Celine Dion, proud Canadian, and very operatic, very powerful voice. Blind man, just incredible. Am I getting that right?
Yeah,
he is the one, right?
Yeah.
You looked at me and I'm like, wrong? Am I wrong there? I have a terrible memory. Okay, so that operatic type of voice, and I do remember your father's vibrato for sure.
Well, my dad didn't sing that particular genre of music. So when I heard Andrea Bocelli, I was like, wait a second, it sounds like my dad, but it's not my dad. I know that for sure. And it was Andrea Bocelli. So my dad sang traditional folk music and he wrote his own songs. And that's the reason I always thought it was okay to write songs, because my dad did. If he could, I could, and anybody else could too. And I thought that everybody did,
Yeah, totally. And so I want to just go into a little bit of the context there. So you said he lived in a castle, which is true. But you just kind of glossed over why he lived in the castle. How did he get live in a castle?
Well, even though he was scarcely educated, I'm going to say, because I think he went to grade 9, possibly.
Which is pretty good in those days.
In those
no?
days, yeah, it is. So he was the meteorologist for the town. And so the whatever weather equipment there was in the castle. It was held in the castle. And he was also the go-to man for the count. So the count would call him and ask him to do various tasks through the course of the day. And he took care of the grounds, he took care of the castle. I guess you could say it was janitorial in one sense, but again, he was also the meteorologist. And my mother did whatever the countess needed having done. And they lived in the castle. They had their own little space in one of the rooms. And it was almost like, I guess you could say it was kind of like one of these places where you rent and you got a kitchenette and everything. It's just everything was there for them, and it was as good as you could ever ask for. And had they stayed in Italy, the count had promised my dad he would have something one day. Nobody knows what, because he left.
Do you know why they came to Canada?
Because of the babies that were dying. That was essentially everything. His older brother had come to Canada, and he had told the younger brothers, 3 of them came at once, and they came without their wives. And he had told them, if you come here, your babies won't die. You'll be allowed to go to the hospital. And
wow.
So my father was happy to take that recommendation.
I did not know that he was the town meteorologist, but that explains so much, because he would always tell us what was coming. And I was just like, this guy, he thinks he's psychic or something. I had no idea.
He knew,
that's hilarious.
He knew weather. I remember one day here, I was hanging clothes outside. I had just washed them, and he looks at me, he goes to me, don't even bother. He's like, bring them inside, it's going to rain. And I looked at him and I thought, you're nuts, Dad. But he said to me, see those clouds over there? And they were a little bit in the distance. I said, yeah, I see them, Dad, but they're far away. And he said to me, no, they're going to be here in 10 minutes. And sure enough, in 10 minutes, I was scurrying to take my clothes back in because it was a really bad thunderstorm.
Wow. Your parents, again, really interesting to me, because they came to this country, grew up in a completely different time. Like, not just, I say time because what I'm trying to underscore is that it was a time of poverty in Italy, right? It wasn't just another culture and another country and another language. It was a time of extreme poverty, and like they did well, but doing well in Italy at that time, in that region of Italy, was nothing compared to what life was like here in Canada.
Well, you have to remember that during the Second World War, Italy, the leadership in Italy had decided to pair with Germany, and at that time that was a bad decision. While the Italians really didn't follow the same,
they didn't support it.
They didn't follow the same ethics. They didn't believe the same way. In fact, I heard stories from my father, from my uncles, about how they didn't do what they were supposed to have done. And they were just as happy as anybody could be when the Allied forces came and liberated Europe. So there was poverty in Italy because the leadership had bankrupted them and had made poor choices. And so people were having a very difficult time. The only thing that kept them from collapsing, perhaps, was the fact that they were mostly farmers.
And so how did that keep them together?
Well, they could feed their own.
I see.
They knew how to take care of, any food need. And well, you might not have been wearing the latest,
The latest.
Exactly.
What cousin Josephine made,
And not even that, but there at that time, the fashions didn't change every year. They changed every decade.
Yeah.
So you could, as long as you were wearing clean clothes and you looked decent, you could get by with a lot for a long time. But if you didn't have food, if you couldn't feed your family, then that would be a struggle, right?
Yeah, the history is very interesting. There literally in Italy at the time was a group called the Partigiani, right? I don't know if I'm saying it perfectly, but and they were essentially kind of like a militia, a group of like-minded Italians that started fighting against the Germans. And Italy had a notorious reputation for, and I don't know if this was like across the board, but they had a notorious reputation for being called in after the Germans conquered a territory to hold the territory. And they would pretty much party.
Well, I think what
As much as
your
they could.
dad's father used to say, it was true for a lot of Italian men. They would go in and look to see what kind of wine was going to be in the cellar, and they would just crack that barrel open, and that would be that. They weren't there to kill people.
They didn't know why they were there, a lot of them, right?
I don't think they did. I think they were there because they were forced to be. If they didn't participate, then there would be some sort of consequence, and they were not going to, put up with that.
So at the end of, or near the end of the war, your father, Italian, allied with the Germans, was imprisoned by the Germans.
And so was your other grandfather.
He was imprisoned by the English. I think they were imprisoned by opposite sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very possible. I don't know because I didn't ask him, but I know they were both imprisoned. And my dad was not married when he went to war, so he didn't get married till he got back. So he was in jail. Yes, he was imprisoned.
So explain that to me, like from whatever you know, because I'm sure that there's a lot of nuance and detail that wasn't shared. I know he didn't like talking about the war. I remember. I don't know if we said, or I don't know, for some reason, someone put on Saving Private Ryan and said, hey, Dad, you're gonna love this. It's going to remind you. Everyone says that this is authentic. And he couldn't watch it.
Yeah. He didn't like watching those movies because it brought back a lot of trauma. I guess they didn't have the term PSTD at that time. That's how you say it. PTSD. But
PSTD sounds like a parental. I don't know. I'm gonna stop there.
We don't even want to say what it sounds like. But anyway, the thing is that it brought back a lot of raw memories, things that no one wanted to return to. I know that my uncle, his brother, that was married to my mom's sister, had been part of the Partigiani, and he was a double agent. He was on the surface a fascista and on the sly a partigiano. And when I asked him to tell me one day why he was crying, he told me he didn't want to speak about it. So just for no reason, we were sitting in his front porch, and I had a rubber ball that I was bouncing, and he was watching me play, and he just started to cry. Aww. And I think, I said to him, why are you crying? And he said to me, I'm thinking of the war. And I said, tell me about it. And he said, no, I cannot tell you about it. Never did. So the men suffered. They, again, were not there because they wanted to be. They didn't possibly understand the consequences of having agreed with their leadership at the time, to enter into that position of being a soldier, a foot soldier even possibly, a nobody and nothing, and maybe taking lives for no reason. When they figured it out, they did try to resist, but they were still considered, Italians were still considered to be part of that agency, I'm going to say that dark agency that required the life of someone because of who they are. And that's not the reality of the Italians per se. However, history speaks its own language based on who you're speaking to. That's what I've discovered.
Well, and that's definitely true. I think the victors always tell the story, that's the benefit of winning. And the, what is the word when you it's a political way of using language and stories essentially to tell, starts with a P. I can't remember it right now, but
I can't think of what. Yeah,
it's okay. Essentially, convincing people of a certain belief or angle or
propaganda.
Propaganda. Thank you. And I think and I'm oversimplifying it greatly, but I'm oversimplifying it not just because I could easily pull up some details and make sure that we're saying the right things here, but I think from the perspective of my grandfather's father, they didn't have a history textbook. They didn't have a wire from the politicians. They had a very simple understanding. And for the Germans had this is not a way to put it, but they had the benefit of years of propaganda and buildup. And I think in Italy, the propaganda, especially in the South, was that Mussolini will make our area, our country safe, will reduce crime, and is partnering, allying with a strong nation that will have our back.
And that was what my mother knew of the war. My mother, I remember coming home from school one day telling her that I had studied Mussolini, and all I had heard about him was something negative. And she had a big smile on her face, and she said to me, "Oh, really? He was so wonderful." And I looked, and I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
And it was years and years before I recognized that my mother saw the Mussolini who you could leave your bicycle, which in those days was a rare jewel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could leave your bicycle outside. You could leave your front door unlocked. You could leave your wallet with money spilling out of it on your picnic table, and nobody would touch anything that belonged to you. That was all she remembered. That was all she knew of the war.
Yeah.
This security blanket that swept over them until the Germans came to the country, because the Germans did end up coming to Italy. And in fact, my mother was saved by her sister. So my mother was not married yet, and her sister was, to his big brother. And there were 3 German soldiers who caught a glance of the 2 women walking, and they put their eyes up on my mom. And my aunt immediately knew that they had no good on their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so she
was married. She was in the know.
She was in the know, but more than that, she was, like you were saying a little bit earlier, she was a little tougher. She was a little stronger. She had a little less fear in her. She was motivated to be the guardian. And so she pushed my mother along. And when the soldiers came to grab the 2 women, she grabbed a shovel and began beating them both. And they were able to run away.
I smile, like I'm so proud, because I think I can comprehend on some level, and I recognize that I can't comprehend at all the amount of strength. Like, I grew up in Canada in the 80s with a traditional family and traditional beliefs and values. But the idea, and don't get me wrong, in the south of Italy, I think there is a lot of turmoil culturally around authority, around being able to trust authority and that sort of thing. So when you see a soldier, I don't know that necessarily comes with some meaning around, like, oh, I must listen to this person. But as a woman, to stand up at a young age against 2 men in uniform, I honestly think that if I was in her shoes, that would have been completely incomprehensible. It would have been an idea that wouldn't even come to my mind. Honest to God, I would think, do whatever you have to do not to upset these men. Honestly, I think that's what would my thinking would have been at the time when I saw them coming towards us.
My aunt thought of my mother's virtue, and that was more valuable to her than her life.
Yeah.
The aspects of a person's thought process has changed so much over the decades, and especially because we have such freedoms, and especially because we haven't faced or been challenged with various elements of authority to this point. I don't know if that's about to change, but
to your point, we're very blessed.
We are,
right? And we don't, as you know, there's this saying, and I get all of the sayings wrong, but I think I get the gist right. There's a saying that, true wisdom or true knowledge is actually understanding that you know nothing.
Oh, definitely. The older you grow, the more you realize the nothing you know. It becomes a bigger and bigger sphere in the parameters of your mind, because there's so much to know, and there's so little time to really absorb it all. You can't. Even my reading those encyclopedias as a child, the information has changed millennia since then. I mean, nothing is the same, probably.
Your vocabulary is impeccable, though, I have to say. And I'm grateful, because you made it possible for me to, I don't know, I just naturally knew grammar. Like, you taught me these things, and my ability to go into a boardroom and speak in the same language that, is on the contracts or in the proposals, and hold my own that way. That came from you. And it wasn't because you sat me down and forced me to read some book. It was literally because you modeled it.
Well, I think that for any other educational aspect that I might say that I have grasped, what I have recognized is that communication is key.
Mhm.
We have nothing if we cannot communicate. In fact, we see the trouble that comes from miscommunication
Mhm.
and from the ability to apply a communication. When you talk in terms of politically correct, the politically correct in the last decade has become this big deal. And I've always marveled at that oxymoron. If you want to be politically correct, then lie, then steal, then borrow, then beg, then manipulate, then do whatever you have to do to get there. That's what I've always thought when I hear that term, politically correct. What is that? That's nothing. That means do whatever you can, do whatever you have to, but I'm going to catch you. I'm going to say you're not politically correct.
It's really, really interesting that you say that. And I kind of don't want to jump because I have other things I want to, but anyway, let's do it. So politically correct, you described your interpretation of that. But I think that carries forward to the way that we teach children in school. We teach kids, do not cheat, do not lie, follow the rules, don't copy anyone's work. But when you go into your 9 to 5, whatever your job is going to be, steal the competition's business, copy whatever you got to copy in order to get there faster. It literally is, we talk about the business world as being a dog eat dog world. And we're taught in school this fake version, do this with integrity. But in business, if you operate with integrity, and I would love to say that I operate with integrity. I really, truly try to operate with integrity, but I can't help but feel like my integrity is my downfall. I have easily been outpaced by people who have operated dishonestly and without care for others. And, the only solace, the only comfort is at least I'm doing it my way.
I think that's a great comfort, though. Again, if I'm going to fall back to my faith structure, the golden rule is a golden rule. There is no rule better. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay. And if you think about it, you can try and find some sort of a marketing, phrase that's going to be better than that, a catchphrase that no one will forget.
I love me some good marketing,
right?
Mama.
Yeah, right? But can you think of something better than that? Is there a catchphrase in all of the world better than that? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So you never have to look back and you never have to say, I got this, but look where I am. You never have to look back and say, I'm here because I did this to that person, or I squashed that one, or that's not there. If you get there because of what you were capable of achieving. And it's a blessing to have done that. And that you can have true joy in knowing that you achieved that. Because in the end, when I was a little girl, and I wasn't the least naughty girl in all of the community, but I wasn't the most naughty girl in all of the community either. And the reason was not because my parents were going to give me, spanking when I got home. It was because whether or not they could see what I was doing, I knew God could see what I was doing. It's always been in my conscience for some reason. I don't know why, but it's been there since I was a child. And so I've done things in my life, but I've never looked back and thought, other than my mouth, sometimes I say things I wish I hadn't said that you cannot take back and are quite hurtful and regrettable. But other than that, I can't say that I look back and say, well, I stepped on this person because I wanted it bad. I wanted it badly, more than they wanted it. How badly do you want it? Are you willing to crush the next guy to have it?
Yeah.
And my answer is no, I'm not. If I can't have it legitimately, if you don't think I deserve it, or if it's not going to benefit your whatever agenda to give that to me, then I don't want it. I'd rather not have it. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I get that. And I think logically, I think that way too when I'm being logical. But the truth is we do have a lizard brain. We do have a primitive base instinct. And the base instinct tells us that the one who eats the best meal, the one who lives the longest and the strongest, is the one who wins.
Well, there's a saying, the dog that will be strongest is the one you feed. So if you feed that natural inclination, then that natural inclination, which is usually very carnal and very, I'm going to say low, is going to wipe away what's left of anything good inside of you. And I don't believe that people are truly happy, even if they achieve the world. You have the whole world in front of you, and you've done it by stepping on other people's backs or faces. I don't think you can have the same joy. I'm probably happier when I learned how to paint. I did it on my own. I did it because my sister had died, and I had told myself I was going to paint when I'm older. And then she died, and I thought, well, what if I don't get older? So let me just buy the paint and paint now. And I had such joy. I felt as though I had gone on a vacation because I bought this paint stuff, and
that's amazing.
I was going to paint, and I did.
So what do you think that was about? You expressed something, you let something out that was weighing you down?
No, I think that oftentimes as human beings, we see our lives, they're so compressed with things that have to be done. And there are things that we say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it later, or I'm going to do it, and in my mind, there were certain things I was going to do when I was older. I'm a little older now, but, at that time, I just wanted to, do this so badly. My whole life, I thought of it. I dreamt of that day when I would have an easel in front of me with a canvas that was blank. And I don't know anything technical about art, but it was such a joy when I bought those oil paints and that easel and the paintbrushes and everything that I needed to use to paint, I bought. Spent a lot of money on something I had no clue about and didn't know what to do with. But when I started to do it, I was so enamored. I was so released. I was liberated. There was something inside of me that felt as though it had just won the lottery. And so I think there are thoughts that I have about life and about how we live it. For instance, I believe that not every person on this earth who is acclaimed for something or famed for something is the only person on the earth that could have achieved that. I think there are so many more that never even tried it. And had they tried it, they would discover they were and are the world's best. But maybe they will never have that opportunity, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair and true, I think. I often say something similar around people being miserable in their jobs. And if we could kind of shake the world and everybody who wasn't happy in their job, like the people who were happy were stuck, they were held tight. The people who were unhappy would kind of like jump around as you shook. Like, it would be so much better if we all just loved our jobs, because somebody is doing the job you love. Absolutely. And it is their nightmare.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And you can tell when somebody loves their job because they do it well and it doesn't hurt to do it. So that person, that person who wakes up early in the morning because they want to be where they are.
Yeah.
They want to be doing the thing they're doing. And maybe it means nothing to anybody else, but to them it's fulfilling. And that's all that's required. Who says that what we are and what we do has to be fulfilling to the rest of the world or the people outside that look at us? Who made that rule? It's never been a rule I've followed.
I think that you learn over time, though, that isn't real. My friend and I, Laura, when we were in university, we used to joke that we couldn't wait to be one of the sheep walking down Bay Street in her suit on the way to the subway at the end of the day, as if being a sheep, like, obviously by calling ourselves one of the sheep was acknowledgement that, I don't know, maybe you could say belonging, but that's like the nicest way to put it, like being mindless, right? Being, I think in the army, it's called being a jughead, like they just pour in the ideology and you drink it up. And that was the dream. We wanted so badly to be in our power suit and to feel empowered and to make a paycheck and be able to go to the mall if we wanted to. And our lives are very different now than what we thought they were going to be. That isn't necessarily success unless that is actually what you enjoy. If you enjoy doing that day in and day out, then fine. But yeah, like that, the experience of discovering that actually that's not what I want at all.
Exactly. And I think that the greatest resource in our lives is not necessarily education per se, but the resourcefulness to know how to put to use whatever it is that you have in your capacity, within your grasp, within your mind's sense. Everybody doesn't have access to books. Everybody can't read. But the people that are the best at farming in 100 years ago weren't the people that went to university because they didn't have that.
Yeah, and
It was the people that were in the field.
It's interesting what resourcefulness can teach you, because, you know, I keep a vegetable garden in the summer. It's not very large, but it's a lot for me. Tilling the soil, planting the vegetables, keeping it weeded. It's a lot of work. And for years and years, I've tried to mimic what I saw my grandfather Francesco do, which was he would essentially lay out the land so that he could put the hose in one spot. I guess in Italy at the time, he would get the water from the well, put it in that spot, and it would essentially water the entire area. And he would maybe put a little piece of clay at the end or a pot or something to turn it. But other than that, he would put the water in one area and the entire field, yard, whatever you want to call it, all the plants would be watered. Mm-hmm. I have tried this for years. Last year was the first year I was like, you know what, I'm not going to try. I literally would be on hands and knees trying to like get a slope right for years. And I couldn't get it to work. And that is art and science. And no one taught him to do that.
That's right.
Necessity taught him to do that. He had a huge farm to water.
Yeah.
Right?
Fields.
Yeah. Fields and fields. And he was blessed to have access to a well. Absolutely. I've heard things said about, and they had a well on their property as if it was gold. Who knows what?
It was liquid gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the way it was esteemed. Mm-hmm. And now at this point in time, we esteem things so much differently.
Yeah.
We see the different values, and one of the things that you might consider valuable now is, your iPhone.
You
have the latest iPhone.
You know what though? See, I'm gonna disagree with that, because I think nowadays the idea of having $1,000+ computer in your pocket is taken for granted. And we talked earlier. You mentioned about being politically correct and what being politically correct actually means, and it's kind of it's an oxymoron in the way that you described it. That being politically correct actually literally would mean doing things correctly in the political realm, and that isn't necessarily very ethical. Well, I think things like entitlement and how hard we've had it is actually our concepts are very broken. Now, that's not to say that everybody should have it hard. I'm not saying that everyone should be decimated by their life experience, but I am recognizing that, our forefathers, foremothers had nothing. And we will sit there and look at our iPhone or our Android or whatever it is you're looking at and feel entitled to criticize somebody for what they're wearing or what they're doing.
And the difference was a sense of purpose. They had a sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. They had to make their day profitable. And that did not necessarily mean that there was going to be a money exchange at some point in the course of the day. It meant that they were going to have maybe food on their table, mm-hmm. or something new to wear by the end of the week. Mm-hmm. And so their focus and their incentives were different as well. We have so much now, and every generation of parent wants their child to have more than they've had, but it's not necessarily the best thing that we're, looking to achieve, because in some ways we've taken away the desire to work for something. I'm going to guess that you will remember that the first time you ever bought something with your own money, how it was so wonderful for you to mm-hmm. actually buy it with your own money. I think it was a piece of furniture too, if I remember correctly. And it was yours. Yeah. And it wasn't the item that was the big deal. It was the fact that you could do this on your own, mm-hmm. and it was yours. And no one could take that away from you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, we're just giving things to our children, and we're just giving things to our grandchildren. They have no need to think about how they're going to achieve this goal of attaining something that is going to help them in some way, mm-hmm. shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that's not a good thing. And I would imagine that if anything, we could say that all our hardships are meant to be life lessons. They're meant to be garnered for the experience that will take us to the next step or the next place of achievement, the next platform where we might be safer or stronger or wiser or better. And so life lessons come at the cost of some sort of difficulty.
Yeah, I think, well, the same way that necessity breeds invention, I think pain breeds survival. We learn to grow, we learn to outgrow the things that hold us back. That's the way we survive. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to quickly check in. We've been on for way over an hour. Do you need a break?
I'm sorry. I talk so much.
No, oh my gosh. No, I could keep going on. But I just want to check because my father has scolded me that I need to let people have a break. So I'm checking in. Would you like a break, or are you still okay for a little bit?
I'm okay. I'm not sure if the audience is interested on holding on a little longer.
Well, you know what the beauty is with live streams? They can come back anytime. You don't need to. This isn't Friday night in the 80s or 90s where you need a VCR. You can come back anytime. You can bow out. It's all good. You did mention that there was a post of mine on. Was it a post, or I commented on someone's post on LinkedIn?
I believe you commented on something.
Do you think you would recognize it if I scroll past it? I should have looked before.
Oh, you didn't get a chance to?
I didn't. I should have looked before, but it was a busy day, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just quickly scroll here and see if...
it wasn't this type of platform.
It wasn't. Oh, okay. So I'm going to have to try and find it another time then. So it was not a LinkedIn. Shame on you, LinkedIn. Giving me great content. Okay, I think I remember the tune of the song. Okay, I'm going to try it. All right. Sorry, everybody. You might want to tune out now. Now's the time to go to the washroom. All right, here we go. I've journeyed long, find you, oh Lord. Life's been so hard, and I've been so alone, afraid to cry, needing a friend, alone and tired, nearing the end. No one ever told me how to find you. I didn't even know to call your name. The world was crumbling in and all around me, but you reached out and touched me just the same. Can anybody question why I love you? Does anybody wonder why I changed? You came to me when my whole world was empty. You came to me without making demands.
You got
That
it.
was good.
You got
That
it.
was really good. And I actually don't know if it was good, but it
Doesn't
felt
matter.
good.
Doesn't
It felt good.
You
And we have
remembered it.
never done that.
Never.
So that was really, really cool. I look forward to listening to that later and cringing. But
That's
cringing
fine.
with pleasure and pride and joy.
Absolutely.
So, okay, there's something that, again, I know that there is a format where you have like a 5-minute interview and you got to make it punchy, you got to squeeze in the joke. This is not that format. This is like hanging out at my house over a drink, and I get unfettered access and I get to ask you things. So this is what I'm doing right now. Please tune out if you're bored, but this is continuing. Okay. Your parents, immigrants to this country from a very poor, not necessarily educated area at the time, especially. And they came here and they did something pretty unconventional at the time. You guys took in, I don't know if you adopted a child or fostered a child. Fostered. Was that at all common? Did you know any other families that had fostered a child?
I'm not certain how it began. I know that my mother didn't go out to work because I was little and she needed to be home with me. I don't think there was a thought in her mind of not being at the house when I came home from school at the end of the day. And so I don't know how it began, if someone nearby was fostering a child and they had told her she could do it too. But my parents loved children. That was just the way it is. and my mother was used to being around a lot of people. So they attempted fostering a child from foster care, and the little girl, I'll never forget, her name was Susie, but she swore a blue streak, and by the end of the week I was swearing that way too. And so my parents decided she couldn't stay at the house. But she was the prettiest little thing you ever saw, and so my mom told them that they had to come and take her back. But then my brother met someone out one day, and she had a little boy, and she was not married to the man with whom she had the little boy. And so my brother asked my mom, would you care to babysit him? She needs someone to take care of him. But it's not like, 9 to 5 job. She would come and pick him up at various times through the course of the night. And it began that way when I was about 5, and he ended up living with us for 7 years. At the end, my parents tried to adopt him because he had grown to be a part of our family, but his mother fought them, and of course, he was her child. So that was the end of it. I was going to school to my first ever school dance, and only ever school dance. It was the end of grade 8, and when I got back, he was not there, and I never saw him again.
Oh, wow. Did you get to say bye?
No.
Oh, wow.
It was rather harsh.
Abrupt, for sure.
Yeah, and my parents never saw him again either. I think his mother was worried that they were going to try to take him again if they ever saw him again.
Wow.
They did have grounds to take him from her, but in the end, my parents didn't want to separate him from his mother since he didn't have a father at all.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen.
There's something special though about being chosen, right? Like I heard a story about Steve Jobs, about how kids at school were teasing him that he was adopted, and when he got home and he was crying, his mother asked him, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Oh, the kids said that my mommy and daddy didn't want me." And she said, "No, they're wrong. We chose you." Yeah. And he said that changed his perspective on life.
Exactly. It's all about perspective. I remember when your sister went to school. She was born December 28th. And so she was the smallest child in her classroom. Yeah. She was the youngest, and she was the tiniest.
So just for anybody out there who hasn't yet put their children in school or doesn't have children, essentially the year is, or the grade is populated by kids that are, if you're in grade 5, all of the kids were born from January to December of a certain year, which means that the kids that were born on January 1st or anywhere near there are a year older than the kids born at the end of December. And that actually, there's a really interesting book called, I think, The Talent Code, that talks about, what do we see in the outliers and the top performing people in any field. And what's really interesting is, I'll use the example of hockey players. I remember that in the book. And most of the top hockey players in the world were all born January to March. So there really is an advantage of being born early in the year, because the way we organize our schools and such, if you're born at the end of the year, you are literally the runt of your class, even if you have a high capability, high ability. Right.
So I walked into this hallway, and I saw a chart on the door frame, and it had all the children's heights. And of course, your sister was the shortest and the tiniest.
And Italian, right? Italian. Southern Italian. So that has an effect.
That's right. And I was thinking to myself, oh, goodness, what am I going to say to her to make her feel happy about that? And she rushed out the door, and I didn't have to say a word. She said to me, Mom, look, I'm first.
Aww.
Yeah. So it's about perspective. It's always about perspective. I hadn't thought of that, but she did.
Yes.
So that was good enough. I wasn't going to challenge her at all.
Well, it's interesting. I remember, I think it was in grade 6. Was it grade 5 or 6? I'm not sure exactly, but our teacher at the time had, she was a really smart woman. And she had an understanding that I was different. Okay. Now, at 35 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I hate that. Like, I don't know if I hate that. I don't really care. I was diagnosed. It was determined. Somebody finally told me that I have ADHD. And this is a woman who figured it out, And this was just something she did with all of her classes. She had this poster sheet on the wall, and she had every student their name written out. And if you achieved something, you would get a star sticker. And if you did something that required, not an incentive, you would get a dot on your row. And most kids, if they got a dot, they would go up with a pencil and make the tiniest little dot so that it wouldn't be visible. I owned my dots. I was never going to get a star. I think I got 1 star all year. The star thing was not happening for me. So I owned my dots. So I made large dots the size of the rest of the stars. I made sure that they're nicely spaced out. And we ended up needing to add a piece of paper at the end to continue my dots. So I had more marks on the rows than anybody. It didn't matter if you had stars or dots. I excelled. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget that she brought this thing, like a tool, into the classroom one day, and it was this big plastic hard kind of barrier. It stood on its own. It was kind of like a
shield like they use now.
Yeah. So it was really like, a shield, like a plexiglass shield, like for coronavirus, except it wasn't transparent. It was opaque. And it was, 3 sides of a box. And she put it around my desk. And, it's funny because nowadays when I tell people about this experience, she was trying to contain me. She was like, oh my gosh, this kid can't shut up. She can't stop moving. She can't concentrate. Let's see what we can do. And so she put this barrier around my desk. And when I tell people about it now, people go, oh, you poor thing. And my experience was like, oh, thank God I can jump. I can do whatever I want to do.
Right.
I could be behind there acting like a little crazy ball of energy, and nobody was telling me I was bad or wrong or whatever for it. I was just being me. And eventually she said, you've improved, so we're going to take away this barrier. But really, the only thing that had improved was her ability to perceive my misbehavior, right? So anyway, it's just really, I don't even remember exactly how I got here, but with this train of thought, but it's just so interesting, the perception thing we were talking about. Yeah, it's so interesting how we perceive things. Okay, so let's talk about another thing. Religion. Now, this is something my mom raised me with all of her beliefs, and I went through phases in my life where I was very, very strong in my faith and not so strong in my faith. And I'm not even going to get into my beliefs right now. I don't think that it's really the focus of this conversation. But what I will say is, you have gotten a lot of flack in your life for having faith, for having the faith you have. Mm-hmm. And we live in a country where religious rights are protected.
They have been thus far.
So you do feel that they've been protected?
Thus far.
Okay. That's interesting because I will point out the fact that I think, and I don't say this with any bias, I truly, truly don't, but I think one of the few things that is fair, is acceptable to make fun of these days on television, for example, is Christianity. And again, I don't say that with any bias, but we know that it is not okay to make fun of the Islamic faith, Judaism, although don't get me wrong, well, there are some Jews who, there literally is a term for Jewish humor, Jewish wry. So there's a self-deprecating humor that's been sort of embraced by a lot of Jews, especially in the entertainment industry. And that's fine, whatever it is. But in a world where Christianity is an okay punchline, and everyone is quite sensitive about a lot of things, I'll ask you again, do you feel that your freedom of religion has been respected?
Well, I live in a country where I can pursue my faith, and I have not been, up until this point, incarcerated for my faith. I consider that a privilege. I don't consider that something that has been challenged. However, I've never come out and done anything public that might cause it to be challenged. Mm-hmm. There have been lately reports of various individuals, like for instance, street pastors or preachers, whatever they want to call themselves, who have been ticketed or incarcerated for speaking their faith on a street corner. Do I consider that a challenge or a lack of respect for the faith. You know, there are so many views in life. And that's what I liked about your quote. Your quote was talking about the freedom to speech.
Set the context, the quote where.
So there was a quote on the internet that I happened to fall on. I don't remember where it was. It might have been LinkedIn. It might not have been. I didn't recognize
And when was this?
I saw it 2 days ago. But you may have posted it much longer.
Okay,
farther away time-wise. But what you said there was that people should have the right to speak what they believe. And that doesn't have to be agreed with. But neither does it have to be challenged violently. And if people can't speak what they believe freely, then what do we have? We have not got a democracy any longer. That is one of the things that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects, is our freedom of speech, our freedom to stand for the things we believe. And I do think that that is being challenged right now. For instance, I don't believe that lockdowns are the way to go with this virus. I don't think a virus knows the boundary between Oakville and Mississauga and Vaughan and Milton, and so these places their businesses can be open, and these places, their businesses have to shut down because there's a virus. Well, there's a virus. It is what it is. And in the past, throughout the course of history, there have been viruses. In fact, I did some research, and from 2018 in August to 2019 in August, over 66,000 people got H1N1 in Ontario alone. That didn't show a stat for deaths, but I wasn't looking for that. I was just looking to see, was there something that preceded? And what happened to H1N1? All of a sudden, there is none, and nobody has that flu shot anymore because it doesn't exist. I don't particularly like the way we're being forced. And so that is, to me, that's an affront of my rights and freedoms. And that doesn't mean that other people can't do what is being professed as the solution. I just don't agree that this is the solution. And I have a mind of my own. I'm an adult. I should have the freedom to decide. If I get sick because I don't wear a mask, that should be on me. If I get sick and I die because I didn't have a mask, that should be on me. I could fall from my steps in my kitchen or my house tomorrow, hit my head on the cement floor, and die. That's the reality. It's a part of life. And so I don't believe in inhibitions and barriers like that. But on my faith structure, I have received a lot of flack because I freely speak of my faith. I'm not ashamed of what I believe. I believe in a God. I believe that he loves me. I believe he died for me. And I don't know anyone on this whole planet who would do that for me but him. So I love him. And I have experiences that I can't.
I want to say I would die for you, but I don't think you'd let me.
No, I probably wouldn't.
No, you probably wouldn't.
But you see, on Earth, we do have situations that call for someone to rescue another individual.
Sure.
We have that for soldiers who rescue people who are in dire situations in war-torn lands.
Yeah.
We have police officers who go to bat for someone who's being violently addressed. We have various structures in society that call for someone to protect or defend another individual. A mother will defend their child. You've read of women lifting cars because a child was under that car. Now, that doesn't seem to me like something that I could do. But I don't know. Maybe I could in that moment.
Yes.
Maybe I could force myself to. If it caused me to die, I might be able to because I love the child enough. But the point is that when we know something and we hold to that something, we have grasped it, we have believed it, we have experienced something that no one else perhaps has experienced, then you can't take that away from me. And I can't make you see what I've seen.
Yeah. You know what? I think that is really, faith is such a difficult thing. It's I think it is easy to have an opinion about a religion, about an organized religion, a group that has a set number of rules or whatever. I think it's easy to have an opinion about that. The same way it's easy to have an opinion nowadays about a race or a gender. it's actually socially acceptable to say certain things that are sweeping about a group of people. I have a challenge with that. I really truly do. I don't think that it is fair to judge me on the fact that I'm a woman, that I'm an Italian woman, that I'm perceived probably as white by a lot of people, that I am perceived as educated and entitled or privileged. I don't think it's fair to make assumptions about me because I'm a mother, because I'm married. I think if you actually get to know me, you'll discover that there are a lot of things that I do believe, say, that don't align with any of those one identities. And yet I'm still all of those things, but I'm not one of those things.
Exactly. And that's why I love God so much. He doesn't look at us for what we see externally. He looks at the heart of an individual. The Bible tells us that God goes into our heart and looks at the intention. So how you intend something, why you've done it. I could say you're beautiful, and it's because I want you to say that I'm beautiful. Mm-hmm. Well, there's an agenda there.
Mm-hmm. The other element, though, that's so interesting to me is that sometimes you say those things not knowing that that's what you're trying to get.
But that's not the same as intending.
Yeah. Okay,
when you're intending,
fair.
You actually have a thought in that direction.
You have a specific goal. You're trying to go after something.
Yes.
And that, I think, is that's where humans actually are their own undoing, right?
Yeah, and that's a form of manipulation.
Sure. And sometimes wrong. Manipulation can happen for good. It really can. If you know, I think it's true. Like if you know that I am more likely to give you a chance to get to know me if you offer to help me at some point. And you really just want to get to know me. I don't think that that's malicious. I don't think that that's evil. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
I wouldn't consider that either. Like as a mother trying to get their child to eat Brussels sprouts.
Sure.
Might make, a promise of, I'll give you an extra 10 minutes on the video game if you eat these Brussels sprouts. Mm-hmm. That's not to me a manipulation. It's a little bit of a bribe.
But I think the tool itself isn't the evil. I think the outcome is, right?
Possibly. I think when anyone is trying to undermine another individual using a strategy that's not clear, mm-hmm. that is not right.
I really struggle with that, Mom. So there's a word in Italian, furbo, which is, there isn't an English equivalent. I think the closest is cunning, and but it's kind of like street smarts. Like in Italian, furbo is a positive quality. It's not something undermining. It's not something backdoor. It's not something malicious or dirty. It is skillfully wise, and you wouldn't describe it that way?
It's almost conniving.
See, okay, almost. Yes, it's almost conniving, yes. Except it is something you are proud of. So in English, conniving is something that you don't want to be described as. In Italian, you do want to be described as furbo.
Well, it depends. It depends what the reason, again, what the agenda, what the outcome, the final result achieved. It can change that word from a beneficial connotation to one that would be considered demeaning.
Okay, so that's fair. I think that's fair. Like you could have somebody who's furbo for good reason or bad, or for good outcome or bad, something positive or malicious. Getting your kids to eat, being furbo to get your kids to eat Brussels sprouts is different than being furbo to try and get a different rate at the bank illegally.
Yeah. Right? Do you remember when I bought liver for all of you guys?
I do.
And tomato juice.
Yes, Mott's Clamato or something.
Yes, and you guys never liked it after that, or liver.
Well, I don't know that we ever liked it.
No, exactly.
That was
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yes.
I most definitely remember that.
You'll never forget that, right?
Absolutely.
You remember that it only happened once, right?
Yeah, and I remember there was something, it must have been that Mott's Clamato can in the cold cellar that haunted us. I don't know, I just remember.
But that was my attempt to get you guys to eat the other food that I made without complaining.
Yes.
I was gonna make you eat liver and have Mott's Clamato juice. I'm sorry to name the label.
Sorry, Mats.
Nothing against you. I just never had purchased it before. And I could only think that it would balance the taste of the liver. And that's the reason I bought the two together. Yes. But it didn't work.
See, you had a good reason.
I had a decent application in my head, but it didn't come to fruition because none of you liked the juice or the liver. And then I felt so bad making you eat liver because I hate liver that I couldn't go through with it. And it didn't come out the way I expected.
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely remember that. Yeah, look, I think that we often need to be pushed to do something. And the oddest thing can push us to grow, right? Sometimes, like my second and very long-term high school boyfriend, he wanted to become a lawyer. I started dating him at the end of grade 9. He would say, I gotta go do homework. And what did I want to do? Well, I wanted to do homework. I wanted to be able to talk about my homework later with him. And so I honestly think that was one of those things that influenced me in a positive thing, influencing me in a positive way. But whether you're trying to use incentives or punishment or peer pressure or whatever it is you're trying to use to get somebody to, follow a certain behavior, we sometimes need to be pushed to grow. It is easy. It is instinctual to just keep doing whatever the heck we've been doing that has allowed us to survive and thrive and succeed and all of that.
Or the thing that's easiest. Oftentimes people slide into that rut.
Yes.
Right?
And I would just add to that as animals with that lizard brain, just making it to the next day for our lizard brain is success.
Well, I don't want to call my brain a lizard brain.
Well, they call it the lizard brain because essentially as far as I understand it, the most basic brain structure is a reptilian brain. It is in snakes, it is in worms, it is just the most basic.
They're not mammals.
No, they're not mammals.
Yeah, so I'm not going to associate my brain with that.
But essentially, at the very, very center of our brain is that same basic element. And then we have all this other stuff around it. Okay, well, can you accept that?
No, I call it the natural inclination. It's the human carnal tendency. It's in all of us. And I consider my particular viewpoint is that it comes from a sin nature. You don't have to teach a child to lie. You don't have to teach a child to steal. They can just come up with that on their own.
I have to attest, I have the most angelic daughter.
You do. So far, so good.
No. This little thing. She will say, she has lied to me about finishing certain meals. And, I ate my apple. I promise, Mommy. What? I can see it on the plate.
Yeah, but she doesn't understand what lying is. So
yes, but you just said you don't have to teach your baby to do that.
But you don't, exactly. She didn't need to be taught.
That's my point.
She did it. But the beauty is that she's still so innocent. She doesn't know she lied.
She doesn't know it's wrong. Yeah, exactly. That's fair. That's fair.
That's the element of innocence that when that goes, then we're dealing with a whole different can of worms. Mm-hmm. And that's the difficulty within, the sphere of being a parent and dealing with each child. Being a human, yes.
Because I don't think age even matters.
No, right? It doesn't.
We ultimately, I think we'll find a way to justify anything that we really, really, really want to do.
But ultimately, I believe that people will come out shining if they're doing something they love, if they have a natural talent toward that, whatever that is. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. And they do it with their heart. Anything made with heart. Your father could always tell when I didn't cook the meal with my heart. Mm-hmm. It was something that used to drive me crazy. It doesn't anymore because in the last, I'm going to say 5 years, since Marcella was so sick, I began to cook everything for her and I began to love cooking. It just kind of grew out of that. But he could always tell when I cooked something because I had to. I have to make dinner, and it's true. And I think that's applicable to everything, that people can tell when you've done something with your heart, when you've put your passion, when you've actually placed a piece of who you really are, something that's intrinsic fair. About who you are in that thing that you've done, touched, said, looked at, whatever. It becomes the notable difference. And I believe that's because, and I'll go back again to the same faith structure, I believe, God breathed himself, a bit of himself into each human being. And I believe that when we do that as well, when we breathe of ourselves into something for someone else, that not only will we find that we're joyous in doing it, but we will be satisfied, and so will the people that we've done it for. Now, sometimes you're not appreciated because there are people out there who are hardened, who are cynical, who are never happy. They can't get enough. And those people need someone to be able to do that for them often until it breaks down that whatever barrier they've put up, because they put up a barrier for some reason. Something has, I believe, pushed them into that particular state. Maybe they're miserable at work.
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of, man, if you are really miserable at work, it can kind of taint your whole life. If you are miserable at home, there's no amount of joy anywhere else in your life that can revive you.
But if you're miserable at work, you can take it home.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's
and make
totally
the people
fair.
at home miserable too.
Yeah, that's the really terrible thing about negativity is it spreads, right? Like
and it's contagious.
It spreads. It's contagious, like a virus. And I really think it's our effort to divest ourselves, get rid of it, that makes it so effective at perpetuating. Okay, so I kind of want to wrap with a couple of questions. And I've never asked you this. I have no idea what your answer is. I don't know if you have an answer. Okay. But I think that it flows well from what we were just talking about. And for anybody who's watched this from beginning to end, or does watch this from beginning to end, the moments that you can see my mom come alive, and she's like a really passionate woman, right? And she's been kind of meek in moments. But there are also moments during this conversation where she's really come alive. And so I'm going to ask, and I think it's related to those moments of strength and power and all of that. I'm going to ask, you've been on this earth. You have lived as a daughter, wife, a mother, a sister, friend, a Christian who goes to synagogue. You have been pushed out of high school. You have finished high school and many other programs since then. You are a woman who has lived many lives in some ways. And you've got a lot of experience on your belt. And what I would ask is, why are you here? What is your purpose? What are you here to do? What is your why?
I believe that I may just be a stepping stone for someone else. I don't.
And you're okay with that?
Yes, I would be. If the reason that I'm here is to affect some sort of inspiration or impact someone in some way, shape, or form, to benefit not only them, but the people that they will reach, teach, love, change. We are constantly growing, and that's why education is so important. And I'm not talking necessarily about book smarts. Books are so important, and I love them. I read them, as you know. I don't get enough of them. I'll read 10 at a time if I have to, if I can. The thing, though, that comes with the word education in my sphere of thinking is this. It's not about the person teaching you. It's about taking every single circumstance that we go through, every confrontation, every challenge, every reward, every adulation, every circumstance that we enjoy or that we don't enjoy, and make something of it, because it's part of our learning curve. It's part of the life lesson. It's part of the thing that is going to grow us to be that person that God created us to be. I believe that He created each and every individual with a purpose. I believe, well, let me tell you this. When Marcella was alive, before she died, in that 6 months time frame.
So let's just set context for anybody who's tuning in anew. Marcella is your firstborn.
Firstborn, yeah.
She was diagnosed, had her first symptoms of MS at 16, diagnosed at...
No, way before that, around 8 to 12 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the first symptoms that I knew about that she talked about to me anyway were at 16, diagnosed at 18.
Yeah.
And passed away at 37. 38.
We just didn't talk about it before that. She used to tell me that her feet were asleep and she would fall and she was clumsy and she never had any particular balance or any type of agility. And we all thought she was the biggest klutz, but meanwhile she had a condition. And when she said, my feet are asleep, I said to her, your feet fall asleep a lot. And she said, no, Mom, they never wake up. I knew something was not right. And that's when we began looking to see what the matter was. We found out she had multiple sclerosis, and we worked with it the best we knew how, which was not at all. We did not know how to. We discovered a little more about how to work with it around the time that we were told she was going to die. And had we begun sooner, I believe we might have been able to do something more. However, in that 6-month time frame that we had together when we were told she was going to die and then she actually did die, she and I used to have nights at home together where everybody else would go out and I just didn't go out. I think I went out of the house a handful of times that 6 months. And we used to watch near-death experiences together. So these
TV show?
No, they're on internet, and they are testimonies or accounts of people who have actually died. It's documented and have come back to tell about it. And we began to see patterns. We began to be able to tell people who actually did see something that had to do with God and people who just saw something. Okay. And that there is a definitive line between the two. And there were several that remained in our minds because of what they presented to us. So one individual in particular had said that when he died, he was taken into the spheres of the heavens and he saw God sitting on his throne with a baby on his lap from a distance. He wasn't allowed to go closer. And he asked the angel, why is that baby on his lap? And the angel said, before every child on the earth is born, they sit on his lap and he tells them their purpose. And he tells them how much he loves them. I know, I've not been able to forget that. I believe. Oh,
I love that idea.
Isn't it amazing? It gives a whole new initiative, I'll say, to the idea, the context of being on this earth for something, not just for nothing. And I believe those people who are sitting on their couches eating potato chips and watching a movie and do that day after day after day after day and never do anything more than that. So not just because I sit on sit and eat potato chips too.
You sit on potatoes?
I'm just, yes, I'll do that too.
They're comfortable.
But I'm saying for those people who are never motivated, for those people who feel like there's nothing on this earth that that they need to do, that they can just lull their way through it. They have wasted so much, but the reason they're there doing that is because they've never sought that thing that brings them joy and that initiates from the in parts of their being, comes out and perpetuates itself in an impassioned plea for life in some way, shape, or form that maybe nobody else ever thought of. That's where I think creativity comes from. And that's what I believe. Whether or not I achieve a purpose that fulfills the person that is in this shell doesn't even matter so much to me as the fact that I might be here to help someone else do that. And that's okay, because someone came before me and helped me be where I am today. And that person loved me, and God loves me. And I have a family of people that love me. There are people on this earth who have no one. They believe they have no one that loves them, but they're wrong, because God loves them. And like I like to tell you so many times, when you were a little girl, and you'd say to me, well, I don't like this and I don't want to do this. And I'd say, well, I'm your mother and God gave you to me. And so, you got to do what I say, because I've always looked at it like I'm your mom on this earth, but he's your father in heaven. And if I don't do what I think is just and good and right and true, then I'm going to have to answer to him one day, because you're his before you were ever mine.
I see that for sure. It's interesting. I probably used a similar argument with my son. Well, especially because my son Dante went through a very strong religious period. And for a boy who's 11 to say that he went through a period of time where he was very connected to God, like he would sit in bed at night and read the Bible without any prompting, like that was his choice, like it was kind of odd and shocking and awesome, good for you, kid. Yeah, you want to read that? Go right ahead. You don't need to get your morals from, I don't know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever, the good show of the day is. That was great, and I'm pretty sure that I used that angle with him too, like, well, God gave you to me, kids, so I didn't know that I had borrowed that. I had no idea.
And what did you get for an answer? Because
why? What did I give you for answers? I have to say, Dante is really, he's a really special boy because he is tough. He is really tough to get through his exterior, to be deemed important. Like, I think once we grow into adults, we start to kind of shed people and say, well, it's not that you're not that important to me. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not going to go on this roller coaster with you. I think Dante's been able to do that at a very, very young age, where he was able to shed things that didn't matter to him. But if you make it very clear that this is an important moment, at least in my experience, he will wake up, he will show up, and he will show you that you matter to him, and which is really, really special to me.
It is, and that's a love language, right? Because there are various ways of communicating. And one of them is not communicating, it's doing, it's being, it's
acts of service.
Absolutely. And there are several different types of love languages, and different people receive them depending on how they see it. But sometimes you have to connect yourself to the individual and say, well, why did they do this? It may have taken a great effort to do whatever they did, to get your attention or to get your approval or to get your notice or whatever. Again, communication. But for me, more than anything else, it's not just about communicating with humans around us and people around us, but with God. I don't have any wisdom of my own.
Wisdom I have, I won't accept that.
Well, any wisdom that I have comes from having believed that there is a God, and trusting that He doesn't only love me, He loves the people around me, and I, in homage to Him, owe it to Him to love others as He loves me. And I don't see anything that has creates a wall or a barrier there. I don't care about race, color, creed, faith, structure. It doesn't matter. He's not looking at that. He's looking at the person's heart. Does that mean that a person can go throughout life without knowing Him? I don't believe so. But then that's a personal issue.
Can a person go through life knowing God, a God, but naming Him something different than what you name Him?
I don't know.
Okay,
I can't answer that. Because only He'll know if they're speaking to Him or if they're speaking to something else. And He does not allow for idolatry. That's one of the counterfeits that He just will not allow. But He's the only one that knows if that's what's happening. If someone is into, worship of the dark side, they can't say that it's Him. So I would say that's, that wouldn't be acceptable. But as for what's inside a person's heart, I don't know. Only He's, and that's what I love too. Like, we are on this earth, and we so often judge each other. We judge what's been said. We judge what's been done. We judge how a person looks. We judge. And often we don't mean to be judgmental because we don't want to be judged. But the thing is, He's the only one who can do it, because He knows exactly what is the motivating factor.
There's something really, really funny that happened recently. On CNN, there was a newscaster who was talking about how we treat each other, and he said, I don't know, I don't remember how the connection came about, but he said, what would Jesus do? Jesus wouldn't judge. And then this other guy using that clip, commenting on his show saying, he said, have you met God? Like, God judges. He makes rules and He judges.
That's the whole point.
The whole thing,
Which was funny.
in terms of the judging,
Mhm.
that we have to remember there's a standard.
Mhm.
If you look at the 10 Commandments, they are complete. I don't think there's a sin that you can perpetrate, if that's what we want to call it, commit
Mhm.
that isn't somehow connected to those 10.
Mhm.
And if you try to add something to it to make an 11th, I don't know what you would add. I've thought of it a lot.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything. Maybe I'm narrow-minded. Maybe,
it's funny because I'm sitting here going, how about cheat? No. How about lie? How about murder? Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
It's in there.
There's 10 and they're all in there.
Mhm.
They're defined. It's a standard. If you take that standard apart and you take away the confines, you don't just break down the standard, you break society, you tear it down, you create chaos.
I can't help.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Who creates chaos? That one that wants to crush you. Creates chaos and then comes back with a remedy later.
I can't help but want to make that as an episode. Like, bring all of the additions to the 10 Commandments, and I would love to have like a few experts to sort of debate that out. It's interesting. What would we come up with? Okay, so I'm going to oversimplify, but I asked you, what is your purpose? And you said a lot. But I think for me, the thing that I heard as the theme that runs through it all is that you find meaning, you find purpose, and you help others find theirs. And for you, obviously, there's a very specific thread, a very specific theme of it being connected to your faith. But I see that. I see that ability to sift through the good, the bad, the ugly, and sometimes the proportions are unfair, and find what matters there. And I can tell you that in my life, the one lesson, no matter where I agree with you or disagree with you, whether I love what you've done or want to do it differently, the one thing that I can point to consistently that you have taught me, that you've taught me to hold on to with pride, is to keep dreaming and to keep growing. And like, it's interesting because I at the very beginning of this, I think I said the word insatiable. You have given me permission to be insatiable, regardless of what I'm insatiable about. Like, forget, like, that almost is superfluous. That doesn't even matter. You have given me permission to be me in all my insatiable at all my insatiable levels. I don't even know if that's used properly, but I am really grateful for that, because I do not know anybody or any other thing that has taught me to open my heart and dream and believe that impossible is a dare more than you. And so I'm really, really grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I do hope that your insatiable hungers and cravings come with a standard. I believe that they do.
Oh, mother mine.
I've always had, like I said, as a child, just seeing what I could see with my eyes and then believing for what I couldn't see has always been something to grasp for. And I personally believe I found that in my faith, in my trust of an almighty God, not only creator and sovereign, but a merciful father and shepherd, friend, my best friend. And I hope that, yes, that it remains in such insatiable appetite, because without appetite, we just
atrophy.
Yeah. And wither away and die. There's nothing left. And when there's nothing left and nothing matters, what would this world be if everybody felt that way? I hope that.
And on that
happens.
happy note, I just had to. It was just perfect timing. All right. So
I'm sorry. This went
no. I had fun, and honestly, the whole point is to hang out. This is about connection. This is about hearing each other's stories, and people can drop in, drop out. It's all good. Range Rover, all wood. That's I probably got the tune wrong there, but I like me some Nelly rap. Anyway, what I saw a surge when we were singing. I don't even know if you even know where to look on the screen for this, but when we were singing, our number like jumped.
Oh, really?
Viewers, our number.
And I wasn't even singing very well.
but that's the funny thing, because people are obviously just seeing what's on screen before they actually hit play and get to hear the volume. So I think people like music. So I'm going to embarrass myself again and ask, is there something that we can maybe sing to sign off? Maybe some Keith Green?
Yeah, which one?
I don't know. There's Lord, You're Beautiful. There's also, what's that one? Can't add one thing to what's been done for you. I don't know, whichever's fine. That one's kind of sad. That's okay.
Yeah.
So you want to do Oh Lord, You're Beautiful, or something else? I'm open to something else. I just need to make sure that I know the words.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. But oh Lord, You're Beautiful.
Okay. I haven't sung this in forever. Okay, here we go. And okay, after we're done singing, I'm not going to do any goodbyes. So folks, thank you for your attention and your ears and your eyeballs and your time, your most precious thing to give. I hope this has been interesting and valuable. And I thank my mama for sharing her heart and soul with us as well.
I hope I didn't cause any untoward feelings.
You're
just
good.
because sometimes when we say
good.
things, people take it the wrong way. I know that's a possibility, but all in all, I believe that we're meant to invite speculation and incite consideration, and I hope that this conversation has done that.
Well, it has been invaluable, priceless for me. I always hate the word invaluable.
I do too. I hate
because
it
it sounds the opposite, right?
I think it's not a word.
It was priceless. It is really a word. You know what I heard is not a phrase? Grammatically incorrect. That you can't be grammatically anything unless you're correct. That one blew my mind because I never heard that one was wrong.
I like that.
I need to check that out though. Yeah. Because that I've been saying it the wrong way my entire life. Anyway, all right. So folks, thank you so much for your time and attention and love and eyeballs and earballs. I don't know. Your
lobes.
Your lobes?
Yeah.
No, your drums. Your drums. All right. And we're gonna sing this one out and share, like, tell us what you don't, tell me what you don't like, tell me what you like. Let me know if you have any topics you want me to cover, or any people with really cool stories that you want me to dig into. I would enjoy it very much. And on that note, we're going to sign off from this Smart Self live stream with a song from the completely unknown outside of the 80s Christian circle, Keith Green. Okay, here we go. Oh Lord, You're beautiful. Your face is all I see. For when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. I want to take your word and shine it all around. First, help me just to live it, Lord. And when I'm doing well, help me to never seek a crown, for my reward is giving glory to you. Bye, everyone.